Okay. So today's challenge, for me at least, is to order a pounder. It's like David's challenge is to order and eat seafood. But mine's just to order a pounder. I don't necessarily have to get and eat the pounder, because being a naturally, socially anxious person, it's actually quite hard to go up and order something they don't give you all the time. Sorry, did you mean a quarter pounder or a double quarter pounder? I don't want it. Yeah, I'll see how that goes. Okay, so pretty much exactly what I thought would happen happened. So I just ended up getting a quarter pounder for food, because I'm hungry. So also the second part of this was, because my informational video, I was going to try and do it again today while eating the pounder. Obviously, I don't have a pounder to eat, but just switch seats. Oh, awkward. So, okay. The reason I chose to do the Eureka Stockade, it's kind of disconcerting when cars keep on going past me into the drive-thru. The reason I wanted to do the Eureka Stockade, in high school, or at least in Australian high schools, you have a class called Social Studies, and it is the most boring class. I only remember four things from it. The teacher happened to be petrified, a legitimate phobia of snakes. Second thing, tilted. I thought the teacher was damn hot. In my 13, 14-year-old mind, she was smoking. Third thing is, the phrase, after the 100th, they just slide out. The fourth thing was the Eureka Stockade, which is possibly the only interesting part of Australian history. I was in a hurry and I kind of used Wikipedia a bit, but I did watch a documentary before it, so it's fine. So anyway, the Eureka Stockade tends to be pinned as the birth of Australian democracy, at least in the state of Victoria. But other people think not so, but it doesn't really matter because it's a cool story. I mean, Mark Twain, in his words, by and by there was a result, and I think it may be called the finest thing in Australian history. It was a revolution, small in size, but great politically. It was a strike for liberty, a struggle for principle, and a stand against injustice and oppression. It adds an honourable page to history. The people know it and are proud of it. This is really hard, David. It's like you're lucky you've got your aperture video on Thursday, because this is a lot harder than it looks. So we basically start at the Victorian Gold Rush. During the mid-1800s, it turns out Australia was full of a lot of gold. In 10 years, Australia's population tripled. So people from all over the world came. There were a lot of Irish, British, but including Chinese. I mean, the reason they came was you could barely dig like a metre without hitting gold. Later on, this brood called Sir Charles Hopham came over because, I mean, they didn't really know how to manage shit back then. So despite all this gold, it was eventually drying up. It was still in a debt. So he came in, and he was actually well received. He had a military background. He was very strict and authoritarian, and he had really high hopes. He was well received, and he wanted to do a fantastic job. And so, what he did in that regard was enforce very strict mining licensing laws. The logic being that it creates revenue for the government, so they're no longer in debt. But nobody liked this. Miners were having a lot harder time making returns on everything they found, all the gold they found. And the license hunts were not very much fun either. See, a lot of the police were just a little bit corrupt. They were just not very nice prudes. They would often get a cut from the fines. So they'd go on these things called license hunts, and it'd just be a ton of police coming down in areas, initially just once every few weeks, but it got up to the point where it was like twice a week. And they were super strict, because they wanted that money. If you just forgot it, or if you left it in your tent, you just didn't have it on you, you'd be arrested or fined. So this on top of the fact miners didn't have any rights, it wasn't a democracy back then. They couldn't buy land, they couldn't vote, they didn't have a lot of rights, and now they were getting police on their asses on license hunts to get fees from them to make them pretty much dead broke. So there was a lot of tension. And so, guess what the government decided to do? They tripled the license fee, because, you know, that makes sense. But, you know, once the miners started arming themselves and fighting back, they were like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. They quite quickly receded that law. But I mean, the license hunts kept going on. So at this point, the license searches started going up to about 2 times a week. And they were they were not quite nice about it. So this just kept on escalating and escalating and escalating until someone thinks it's a good idea to burn down a hotel, because that's what you do back in the day when you're pissed off, you burn down a hotel. See, these 2 miners, including this guy called James Kobe, happened to go into a hotel for drinks. And this hotel just happens to be a hangout for all these corrupt policemen. So they're very quickly escorted out. Some of the policemen think it's a good idea to follow them out, beat the crap out of them, and then murder James Kobe. So in revolt, the miners hear about this. They decide, this is a nice hotel you've got here. It would be a shame if it burnt to the ground. And so they burnt it to the ground. I'm out of food. If I had a pounder, I'd still be eating. And I would be happy. I'd be full, but I'd be happy, and I'd have props, but... So basically, this caused about 10,000 miners in Ballarat to organise and create the Ballarat Reform League. It's like it started out pretty much just bitching about the hotel and the bad police, but it turned into a political group pretty fast. They passed a resolution, straight from Wikipedia, they passed a resolution that it is the inalienable right of every citizen to have a voice in making laws he is called on to obey. That a taxation without representation is tyranny. So to kind of cement all this, they all got together and burned their licenses. Fuck the police. In response, the government ordered the police to conduct I'm reading straight off the notes, I shouldn't, because I copy and pasted them from Wikipedia. So in response to this, the police came in, arrested a ton of people, and people were like, man, they're not letting us have our little political group to make rights. We better bust some heads. So at this point, the group split off. You have the extremists who are pretty much interested in physical force rather than moral force. Okay, so I'm running out of camera room. Had to delete some stuff, but I don't know how much more is left. So anyway, there are now 1,500 men in the stockade. And plus another... I'm terrible at counting, David. There's another 200 Americans there. After the Commonwealth Redcoats and the government sees them doing this, they decide to militarise their forces. So the night before the attack, everyone thought it was okay, because they were sure that nobody was going to attack them on Sunday, because it was the Sabbath. So what they did the night before was, they pretty much all got drunk and partied, some changed their mind, went home. By Sunday morning, there was like 150 people left. The military redcoats and the police kind of saw this happening, and they went, now's a good time to start killing people. Okay, so I just had to delete the raw footage of the skipping video. Okay, so I just had to delete more footage, so I'm going to make this super quick. So basically, Hotham died, a bitter old man. Peter Lalor is now a one-armed politician. Eureka Stockade is debatable whether it had an effect or not. Australian democracy is born, for one reason or another. And still, it's probably the only interesting part of history in Australia. The end. Also, I still want my Pounder.